They say talk is cheap, so let's add some value to your voice. It's Targeted Impressions with Scott Cody. So how many of you knew exactly what you wanted to be when you grew up? Astronaut, actor, whatever. And then how many of you are actually doing what it is you wanted to do when you were little? Well, our guest today knew very early what he wanted to be. And a matter of fact, on one of his first dates with his wife-to-be, he told her, quote, "I'm going to be the CEO of a credit union by the time I'm 30. And guess what? He's the CEO of a credit union by the time he was 30. Our inaugural guest on the Targeted Impressions podcast, the CEO of OnPath Federal Credit Union, Jared Freeman.
Thank you so much for having me. And I can't believe you know that story.
I listen with intention as well, man. I'm always trying to pick up little nuggets here and there. So now Jared and I have known each other now for about 3 years. Actually, he is probably the driving force behind this podcast, really. So not to get too in the weeds, but the podcast is a product of 3131 Media Solutions. We're an advertising agency that is a subsidiary of OnPath Federal Credit Union. Jared's idea, and he allowed me to kind of take this and run with it. And maybe phase 3 of this project is this podcast. We're pretty excited. So it was a natural choice for you to be the first guest. So we'll talk about it then. So you knew from an early age about wanting to be in the credit union. How does one know about a credit union at such an early age?
Yeah, I will say that when I was a kid, I certainly didn't know what a credit union was. But I had a really cool opportunity in high school to go work at a credit union as part of a high school private business collaboration where you left school early, went to go work, you got graded on your work performance, on all those things. And they randomly placed me at a small credit union in my hometown in Alabama. And, I liked money, but I didn't really know what a credit union was at that time. But I instantly fell in love with the business model of people helping people, serving the underserved, focusing, specifically on underbanked or underserved communities. Just became a delight. And, I grew up in a household where money was a stressor, like so many others. And I saw the people coming in the branch every day stressed about money, right? I was very familiar with that. And it was my job to help them. And I really, really enjoyed that. And so it didn't take me long at all when I started that job at 16 years old to quickly realize, hey, this is something I could do forever. And never strayed away from that.
So you talk about, learning once you got into that, understand, but you could have done bank, you could have done finance. You talked about the kind of the role of what a credit union does, but there's not a lot of people, I think, that start off that young and realize, I'm not going to do any of this stuff. It's right here.
Yeah. I think I knew enough even at that age to identify that there was something special about this credit union world, that it was different than a bank. The mindset was different. The goal is literally different. The reason we are a not-for-profit cooperative is so that we can do the right thing no matter what. And, how nice is it when you can lay your head down at night, having worked your tail off all day, but feeling really good about what you do, and had fun and made money along the way too. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. You can do all three.
So talk about your journey then. You became a CEO by the age of 30. That was your stated goal. How does one go about doing that? You have to have some intentionality in order for that to happen.
I'll say this. I've never, in my opinion, been the smartest person in the room. I did make good grades in school. But I think that was more of a product of I just did what the teacher told me to do. I did the homework.
That's all it takes, huh? Man, that's what I always did wrong.
I did the projects. I showed up for class. I definitely think there were people in my classroom smarter than me. I think there's people in this industry a whole lot smarter than me. But I will tell you, I also identified that there was a line somewhere that people weren't willing to cross as far as how hard they were going to work, how many hours they were going to put in. How much dedication they were going to have. And I quickly, really, really young, identified that line and said, I just got to beat that line. I got to go past that line as far as dedication, as far as how hard I'm willing to work towards this thing. And man, I can do anything in this industry. And I don't mean that to belittle, my colleagues and my peers out there in the credit union space, but that's really where I set my eyes. I had a wonderful mentor early on in my first credit union where I worked for 10 years. And, he let me make mistakes, which was nice. Probably looking back, he let me do things I really had no business doing, to be honest. But he let me run with it, and I definitely didn't know. I didn't even know the slogan "Fail Fast." In
Right.
leadership that people talk. I didn't even know that slogan back then, but I did it. Right? It was intuitive almost, and so I made a ton of mistakes, but I learned from them. I worked really, really hard, and I was honest with him about my goals. Hey, dude, I want your job.
Yeah.
I want to be CEO one day. And he wasn't threatened by that. And he really equipped me and trained me and mentored me and helped me do that. And so I was there at that credit union from 16 to 26. And then at the age of 27, became CEO of my very first credit union.
27. So before 30. We'll talk about the importance of that, of mentorship, and how are you kind of giving back in that? I mean, usually, and again, 34, 35 years old?
35.
Right? 35. Yep. There's not a lot of 35-year-old mentors out there, but you put yourself in a position to do it. How do you kind of feel that out?
I will say I've struggled with that for a couple of years because I acknowledge that I had great mentors, some of which, by the way, weren't all that much older than me either. But, I wanted to give back. I wanted to pay it forward, if you will. But who's going to listen to the 35-year-old, right? That was really my mindset. And so I really struggle with that. But I have identified and realized I have sort of intuitively been doing it the last couple of years. And I think OnPath has really, because of our success, because of our growth, having companies like 3131 Media, starting our own 501c3 foundation, the OnPath Foundation, different things like that, have given me opportunities to hire people, train people, put people in positions of leadership and authority. Or maybe they weren't even ready yet, but they were going to be ready one day. And so I would say it's a work in progress. I definitely want to be more intentional about that going forward. But I think I have done it in some ways already. But it's something that's very top of mind for me, especially the next couple of years as OnPath is just continue to grow and have so much success. I want to be able to focus on that more.
So that's a great segue. So targeted impressions, the stated goal of this is about intentional communication. So you made the point. There's not a lot of people that want to listen to a 34-year-old, mentor. How do you shape that conversation and be intentional about it so that it has value on both ends?
Yeah, I think, either again, just intuitively or maybe learned through mentors over the years. But I've always just been very candid. And I will say that for some people, that's probably off-putting at first. I have certainly had a mentor that was way more candid than me, to the point where even I felt uncomfortable in a meeting. But I think it has more pros than it has cons. And when you're really, really candid and transparent with people, and you show people that you're not perfect, that you're willing to take a risk and you're willing to fail even and admit when you fail, I think you build a lot of goodwill, you build a lot of trust, and people appreciate that. They like the fact that you're a human, that you can make mistakes and that you can learn from them and move on. So that's kind of been my approach. And I think more than not, that really draws people in and motivates people and inspires people. Certainly there's been times over the years where that's probably put people off too. But I think more often than not, it has really, built a good level of trust between myself and those that I work with.
Professionally, what's the toughest conversation you've ever had?
Oh, gosh. I don't know if you have enough time on this podcast.
I got all the time in the world, by the way. I mean, I'm only trying to get out of here and go hunting, though. So,
yeah. So I will say this. I had an employee. I was CEO of my very first credit union. So this has been, 8 years ago now. Who knows? Maybe one day we'll listen to this podcast. We're still friends. And so one of the smartest people I've ever met in my life. Brilliant. I mean, just absolutely brilliant. But one of the most disruptive employees I've ever had. And, I put up with it to a point that it cost the company money. And I don't mean like bottom line earnings. I mean, good talent leaving, or bad decisions were made, or, opportunity costs, if you will. And so I finally worked up the courage to have a conversation with this person, and it didn't go well. It didn't go well at all. And, and I fired her. And it was hard because on paper, she did all the right things. Reports were turned in on time and evaluations were done of her staff and, contracts, this, that, and the other. Like all the documented, if you will, things were done as they should be. On paper, she was the perfect employee. But in reality, she rubbed everyone the wrong way. And, just created this huge tension in the office. And so it had to be dealt with. And part of being a good leader, by the way, is having hard conversations and doing those things so that you can take care of all of your staff. And so I fired her, and it was ugly, and that was terrible. And then two years later, I saw her at an industry trade show, credit union trade show, and she ran up to me and gave me a hug. And I'm like, oh my gosh, is this what's about to happen? What is this? And, she was like, I was really pissed at you for about a year. Like, I really hated you. I was like, yeah, but that tracks.
Yeah.
I bet you were. And she's like, but it ended up being the best thing that ever happened to me. I moved to a different city. My family's incredibly happy. I have an even better job. I make more money. I'm more successful, and I learned a lot. And so thank you.
Did you have the idea that when you started this conversation with her that you were going to let her go, or it evolved into that as the conversation
it was certainly going to be option A or option B, and letting her go was one of those two options. And I was going to let her dictate that. And, unfortunately it went option B. But, I'm happy to say that she's very successful today in a career and a job that she's absolutely loves and is good at.
You talked about kind of being candid. I think that kind of goes to decisiveness too a little bit, right? But one of the core values at OnPath is empathy. So talk about that balance. How do you balance empathy with being decisive?
So I think in our culture today, people assume that being nice is totally void of holding people accountable. And I don't think they're mutually exclusive at all. In fact, I think part of being nice, if you will, being empathetic, is understanding where people are coming from, but not letting them stay there. Just because someone's in a bad way doesn't mean we should and could, but should let them stay in that bad way. We have a core value of empathy here at OnPath, and we call our frontline financial advocates for a very specific reason. And that's because we want them to advocate on behalf of the member. And so what that really means is, hey, something didn't go your way financially or whatever the case may be, but we like you too much to let you stay there. And so we're going to help promote your life, promote your finances, clean up whatever mess there may be, or put you in a better situation or a better account, whatever the case may be. And so I think it's all in how you look at it. I always say this around here, and I'm sure some people take it seriously. Some people may roll their eyes, but I like to say the kindest thing that you can do is tell someone when they're not meeting expectations. And so, I think that is being empathetic. You may go into a conversation and say, hey, what's going on? Is there something in your personal life maybe holding you back, that, distracting you here at the office, or whatever the case may be? And, they may tell you no, or they may tell you yes. And that dictates how that conversation goes. But then you say, hey, I understand, or I empathize with where you're coming from, and I'm really, really sorry that's happening to you. But at the same time, here at OnPath, we owe it to our members to do the best every single day. And so we got to figure this out. And, I think, unfortunately, that's becoming less common in our culture today. But I will tell you that I am a part of a tremendous amount of professional organizations and groups and networking organizations that they're really trying to work against that. They're almost becoming the counterculture, if you will, of no, we need to tell people the truth. We need to hold people accountable. We need to have high standards and high expectations. And that doesn't mean we're not nice people, right? The two can go together. And so, I don't know that I wanted to be known for that, but I think I have become probably known for that over the last couple of years. And if so, I'm okay with it.
They say don't ask a question that you don't know the answer to, but I'm going to do this. It comes with a story. So the name of our advertising agency, 3131 Media, that's a whole different podcast, separate podcast of how we got to that name. But I remember as we were getting down the road of trying to figure out what we were going to name this thing, we came up with 3131 Media, which is actually the address of OnPath's headquarters, where we are right here. And as you had to go in front of the board to get permission to fund this new endeavor, I told you about the name, and I had a story behind it. If for those of you who aren't in this area, we're located on I-10, which is the main interstate that cuts through Metairie, and then there's a big 24-mile lake that's in the middle of our market, and there's the Causeway Boulevard. So I-10 and Causeway is right where we're at the intersection of. Very, very heavily trafficked. And I said, we're going to call it 3131 Media because we're in the center of what's going on. You've got New Orleans to the left. You've got the river parishes to the right. You've got, the coast to the north or to the south. And I go on this, and I remember your quote was, "Good God, you marketing guys love to come up with a lot of BS." Don't you remember that story?
I do.
And so I tell this story, though. So then we move into the building and we go up to the roof. There's a rooftop that we have access to. We were shooting some videos up there, and I'm watching you, and you're just kind of looking around, and you go, "Wow, we really are right in the middle of everything." And I thought I had some good validation on that. So,
yeah, I never claimed to be right all the time, but that was definitely one. I remember telling the board of our credit union, again, because 3131 is owned by the credit union. Hey, we're gonna start this QSO, and we're gonna call it 3131 Media. And the looks on their faces were like, "Boy, how much do I like you?" So we expanded a little political capital that day, but I think it's truly lived up to its name, and I'm glad we did.
So good. And QSO, by the way, for those of you who don't know, Credit Union Service Organization, didn't want anyone to get confused what that was. But so I asked this, how quickly, because you were wrong in that case with your BS meter was wrong, but how quickly do you honestly feel that you can pick up when someone's feeding you a line?
I think this is in our business, there's so much art and there's so much science behind everything. And I will say in this case, I definitely lean towards the art side of the argument. I don't know that it's something that everybody is born with. And this is a podcast, so I'm definitely going to watch my language. But, my dad had a saying growing up, you can't BS a BSer.
Yeah.
And I think that art, if you will, is just part of my DNA. And so I got that honestly from my dad, I do believe. And so I will say that in most cases, I can probably pick up on someone who's giving me a load of crap pretty quick, pretty quick. And, again, I think there's art and science to it all. And I'm sure I've been wrong many times in those circumstances, but more often than not, my intuition serves me well.
So I like that. There's an art and then there's a science behind it. So you speak in front of large groups, you speak in front of smaller groups, you speak in front of C-level folks. What is the one thing that you do before you go into a speech or a presentation every time?
You're not going to like this answer. I don't think about it, honestly. I enjoy what I do. It's not an act for me. I don't have to think about what I do for a living. I don't have to think about what OnPath does every single day, the role that we play in the community and for our members. I live it. It's part of who I am. It's been part of who I am since I was 16 years old. And so I truly don't think about it. I know our mission. I know our goal. I get up there and I just do it. And I know that's probably not a very scientific answer.
But do you talk the same? You don't talk the same when you're in your C-level.
No, of course. You always identify, who you're speaking to and what the goal is. And usually if you know who your audience is and you know what you're trying to achieve, right? What is the goal of this event? What is the goal of this commercial? What is the goal of this speaking engagement? You just marry the two. And for me, again, I just really love what I do. And so I usually do best if I just get on stage or whatever the case may be and speak frankly.
I can see that. You've done that. Well, look, what we always want to do when we have the guests on here, tell us what's going on, what's new with OnPath. You guys have been in the news.
Yeah. So, we like to do a lot at the same time around here. And so, we've had a very, very exciting year in 2023. We've grown tremendously. We of course, we have a new corporate office we've had now for a couple of years. We had that ribbon cutting actually last night because we finished some renovations and things. really proud of a designation that we got called Juntos Avanzamos, which is Spanish for Together We Advance. And it really has to do with our commitment to the Spanish-speaking, specifically immigrant communities here in the Greater New Orleans area, which is a very fast-growing group of people. And so we had to pour a lot of resources into being able to obtain this certification to serve this community better. So really excited about that. So we achieved that this year. And then, of course, our biggest news just this past week here in December, of course, we went public with our intention to merge with Louisiana Federal Credit Union, which is an 88-year-old credit union based in La Plaza, Louisiana, serving a lot of the river parishes area of Louisiana. A wonderful, wonderful shop. The CEO, Rhonda Hotard, and I have become fast friends. Just an incredible leader. Been there over 30 years, incredible board. And so really, really excited about that partnership. It truly is two very healthy, financially strong credit unions coming together to do what's best for our now 90,000 members here in the Greater New Orleans area. And so couldn't be more excited about that. What a way to end a year like 2023 with announcing this partnership.
So I was fortunate to get to be around and meet and get to know Rhonda Hotard a lot. What I've got to get you now on, because I got her onto Scotch old fashions. She loves them. I can't get you onto Scotch old fashions. You're still more of the margarita.
I'm the tequila guy. Yeah. So I will say, if it's really cold and there's a fire, maybe. But here in South Louisiana, that doesn't happen very often. And so I'll leave that to you and Rhonda for now.
Well, and I'd be remiss to have a CEO on and not get his thoughts on 2024. What's the outlook look like? We're hearing a bunch of things. What are the things you look at and how you start kind of planning out what to expect from a financial standpoint?
Yeah, sure. So I will tell you, I'm not an economist and I don't want to be one. I got an A in all my economic classes in college, but I couldn't tell you what I learned all those years ago. So, I do read a lot. I study a lot. Everybody's going to tell you a different opinion, and I try to get different opinions and I try to marry them and kind of see what resonates. And I will tell you too, in South Louisiana, especially, for better or for worse, and sometimes it's both, we are insulated from some of the national trends, especially in the economy. Our housing market's very different. Our insurance market, unfortunately, is very different. Spending, just the local economy is just very unique here, especially in the New Orleans area. And so I always try to take that with a grain of salt when I'm listening to these national, people talk about the economy and this, that, and the other. But I also try to think about just the regular everyday member, right? The person that's just, we're going to work, picking up kids, going to ball practice, going to church, going out to dinner. What's going to be their impact? And so I will say this: inflation, of course, as you all know, has been a huge problem. People are spending thousands and thousands of dollars more in 2023 than they did in 2022, just for everyday life, gas, groceries, travel, you name it. Everything has gone up. Every restaurant has increased their prices, so on and so forth. And so I'm really glad to see that, I do believe inflation is getting better. Is it pre-pandemic? No. Do I think it will go back to pre-pandemic in 2024? Me personally, no, I don't. But I think we will see some relief in 2024 when it comes to inflation. I definitely think you will see, the Federal Reserve had a meeting this past week, in fact, and they were much more open about the idea that, we're going to start seeing some federal fund rate go down, some decrease there next year.
And the market reacted.
Right. Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, the stocks and everything just had a heyday with that. It's what everybody wants to hear. But they got to be careful. I love history. And so if you go back and look at the 80s, we were in a very similar situation in a lot of regards. And the Federal Reserve was very quick to lower the rates after a high inflation period. And it caused a second dip. They did it too fast. And I hope at least that they're being mindful of that and they're going to be careful with that. But I don't think your average everyday member cares about all that. Really, they care about, okay, what's my car rate going to be? What's my mortgage rate going to be? How much are my groceries going to cost? So I think you will start seeing my prediction, take it for what it's worth. Middle of next year, May, June, July of 2024, you'll start seeing some mortgage rates go down of significance, right? I'm not talking about a quarter of a point because that's really doesn't do much.
Okay.
Car loans going down. I think you're really going to start seeing liquidity issues free up in the banking sector. And so, I think the first half of the year could be similar to now. Potentially maybe even a little worse in some regards, but also better in some regards. And about middle of the year next year, you're going to see some movement. So I think it'll be a good year. I think 2023 has been a very challenging year in the banking world. We had obviously all the banks that had issues earlier in the year, and it was a different crisis than the recession, the Great Recession. And so for different reasons, it wasn't overextended mortgages; it was liquidity, and that really became the big issue. And so that's been forefront of our minds. I don't think that's going to ease any in the first quarter or second quarter of 2024. So again, my prediction is middle of the year 2024, we are going to start really feeling things ease from the liquidity and interest rate and cost standpoint. So I'm hopeful, but I don't think anything magical is going to happen for a couple of months.
And we got to now record it, so we can go back and see right or wrong. Right?
That's right. Yeah.
We can see right or wrong.
Well, I have a disclaimer right at the beginning that I am unqualified economist. So.
Well, look, like I said, we're it's a Friday afternoon that we're recording this. I appreciate you making some time. I know you got to go toast some people upstairs, some new employees.
That's right. Every new employee of OnPath, we end their first day with a champagne toast in the CEO's office, and I'm told they love that. So we do that.
Had I been thinking ahead, I would have had your margarita waiting for you right here, but I didn't. We'll have to get that on the next one. But all right, well, man, I appreciate it. Inaugural guest on the inaugural show. We hope you've enjoyed listening. Targeted Impressions, again, is a product of 3131 Media Solutions, a full-service advertising agency. Reach the right people at the right time with the right message. Take care. God bless, and Merry Christmas.